the energy in the room. Just hit record. Thank you, Melissa. We will do very quick introductions because we have a few new people in the room, and it would be just good so each of us kind of knows our names. I think there are name tags for just about everybody, so we'll use those, and then I'm gonna shut my mouth here in a second, turn it over to Cord, who will just go through kind of a quick agenda overview, and then we will go from Cord, I think, to Paul and some other folks to talk about an icebreaker that we're going to do here this morning. So thank you again for being here. We've got you till around 3 o'clock today. I know there may be a few of you that need to leave a little earlier for various things. We totally get it. Bathrooms are out this door and to the right, just like 20 feet, 10 feet. And there's also a water fountain out there. All sorts of goodies provided by our friends here at Marion County Juvenile Services Department. Really appreciate them for hosting. And our chef deluxe, thank you for all the work. We appreciate it. It's wonderful. Chris, I think it's Chris. You got it. All right, so Brian Dutman, Youth Development, Oregon Director. Paul. No, Paul, the introduction. Just a quick introduction.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Also, Associate Director.
Andy Leonard, Analyst and Applicator, Warm Springs Tribes.
Hi, good morning, Parsa Chanrani, Council Member. Hi, I'm Jenny Martin. I work with the Youth Authority.
Good morning, Jared Shaw, Grant Manager, Workforce Analyst at YDU.
Zana Ujiro, Council Member.
Marisela Ortega, Council Chair.
Abraham Magana, Grant Manager and Operations Analyst with YDO.
Molly Burns, YDO Grant Manager and Re-Engagement Analyst.
Lindsay Schoonover, Compliance Monitor with YDO. Kim Wyatt, Council Member. Sally Deck, YDO Grant Manager and Future Ready Analyst. Anna Zukina, YDO Associate Director.
Lawrence White, the Racial and Ethnic Disparity Coordinator, YDO.
Rachel Moser, Education Advisor in the Governor's Office.
Josephine Garza, Council Member. Jenny Black, Council Member.
Tanisha Bishop, Youth Grant Administrative Specialist.
I am Cord Bucher, Deputy Director.
Hello, Melissa Gallardo, YDO Executive Support Specialist.
Hello, I'm Joy Snyder. I'm the Admin Specialist.
Joy. And online, I'm pretty sure is Tabidi there? I don't have my glasses on. Oh, there.
Yep.
Tabidi, do you want to say hi?
Hello, Tabidi Lewis. Sorry, I was, yeah. Hey, hello.
Tabidi's a council member, vice chair, and council member. So there you go. Cord, I'm going to turn it over to you to talk about agenda. Thanks.
All right, everybody. Hi, Cord Bucher. I am going to talk a little bit about today's agenda. I will give a quick recap to what we did yesterday for folks that were not here. So what you see up on the walls is the product of the work we did yesterday. So we had multiple breakout sessions where folks looked at sets of our strategic plan strategies. When we get into this, I'll recap what the strategies are, but what you see, and we'll have a chance for you to walk around and look, are strategies and the projects that make up those strategies. And then in the notes, there's just some of the responses folks had to the activities we did around just looking at these, questioning, working on just the first pass at possible outcomes or outputs from this work, identifying things that might be missing, things that can be moved or combined. So this is the product from day one, and today we're actually going to dig a little deeper into this stuff. So we're going to do an icebreaker. And then our first breakout session, we're going to spend some time looking at these strategies and really at the high level, what outcomes we might want to see when we look at these strategies and what they result in. So we'll talk more about that when we get to that session. You will have a chance, particularly for those of you who weren't here yesterday, to move around and just look at what's up on the walls before we actually get into it. We'll at lunch, we want to just provide an opportunity for some of our outgoing and second term council members to just talk about some of their experience and share some wisdom with us. And then in the afternoon, we really want to try to get to prioritization. So we've got 8 strategies. We've got a lot of projects. shoved into those strategies. And so we want to talk about what we might look to do first. So the afternoon is going to be really focused on trying to identify within these strategies, what is the project or the first step that might have the most impact, that might really get us early wins and get things moving and help to propel the work forward. So that'll be what we do this afternoon, and what we hope to get at is, really what are the priority projects for us to start with as we move into implementing this plan. And then we'll debrief, we'll talk about some of the next steps and wrap hopefully around 3 o'clock. And that's the plan for today. Thanks, Corey.
I think we'll turn over to Paul.
Now, yeah, all right. This is the one I'm actually listening to, right? Besides introduce myself. So, to be just making sure you can hear me, just a thumbs up or something, just make sure that.
I can.
Perfect. Sounds good. So yesterday's kind of networking activity was to get us kind of mingling and just have a random conversation, maybe some little more structured conversation this morning around some work that we've been doing in our convenings. And so just to update kind of people where we are with what we call re-engagement and workforce convenings. October was the month of convenings for Jared, Molly, Salem, myself, and the other grant managers joined us at a couple of different ones throughout the state. And what these convenings are is to pull our re-engagement and workforce providers together to talk about expanding services across multiple zones. We have grantees that help do that work. So we had one in Medford, one in Eugene, one in Bend, and one in the metro area this past October. Prior to that, we had that same kind of event in April, and we are in May, last May, and then we will do one more this biennium in April 2025. So what we wanted to do for this networking or engagement kind of icebreaker is to do an activity or do some activities based out of those convenings. And so the intent for this is to really focus on something that we brought to the convenings, which is called sources of strength. And I'll talk a little bit about what that work is, but the idea of sources of strength and the purpose of bringing it to the convenings was around the positivity that our programs provide to youth, right? A lot of our programs, any of our programs can be considered prevention-based because of those engagements with it. And this sources of strength model is something that fits really well with it in that work. So just a little bit about sources of strength. I want to look at my notes. I feel a lot less self-conscious that Liz isn't here right now because this is her work. But sources of strength is a strength-based upstream suicide prevention program that is national. It is one of the widest spreading programs throughout the nation. And one of the coolest things I find about the program itself is it's not copyrighted in the sense that you can use it in the materials and adjust the materials as needed. Now, this last, was it September? Lawrence, myself, and Jared went to some training to become trainers of Sources for Strength. At work, we also, as a staff, done some work around that with Liz on it. The idea is prevention. And so we have these positive options and items in a youth's life can really make a benefit, and a lot of our programs do this for it. So the thing that I find the most intriguing about Sources of Strength is it doesn't have to be suicide prevention. It's just positive things in people's lives. I literally gave the sticker, which is on the back of my computer, to my daughter. She was having a rough day. I was like, well, what's one of the things that is positive that you see? And she was like, named off things out of every category without even any context. So today, that's kind of where I want us to go for a networking activity. And so I'm going to kind of go through on your tables spread around. You have what's called the Sources of Strength wheel. So, and there's 11 items there. And so we'll kind of give a quick overview of what that is. So, oh, it's up there too. So if you see the family support, positive friends, and mentors, that's kind of people in people's lives. It can apply to adults and youth along the way, right? Family support is, yes, your immediate family if they're supportive, but it also is those adopted family members we have around that. We have my family has an auntie that has no relation to us, but she is considered family in our lives. Positive friends are around those folks that bring out the positive in you, around you, right? So a lot of people surround themselves with positive friends or positive interactions. Mentor specifically is a person that has expertise in something that is really giving you some insight and moving forward. And so I think that's pretty self-explanatory in that. So that's kind of the people range of the wheel. The other one is like this kind of things you do, things you share. in terms of your own personal life. So healthy activities, those are hobbies, habits, and activities that you do, or that organizations do. Generosity, I think that's pretty self-explanatory, is like the generosity piece that we give forward. And then spirituality, you can read it. But most importantly, it's not just about faith and religion. It can be for individuals, but also it's around the people, places, and positives that you have surrounding your life. So one of the things spiritually for me is being in the woods. I love that, and I find that as a grounded place. Just using that as an example for me personally. And the last two kind of go hand in hand. Maybe someday they will, right? They'll just be called health. But physical health, those are the things you do to take care of yourself. And mental health is really around the things you do to take care of your brain and feeling good about overall life and that work. So super quick definitions. Just thought it was important to give a grounding on that. Any questions on the sources of strength? All right. Raise your hand if you've seen this before today. All right. Sounds good. All right. So the idea that we're going to do, we're going to number off in 4s. And Tabidi, you don't get a number off because you're just going to go with Jared.
Well, actually, I'm wondering if we just want to have her join the group, because otherwise it's.
What
Okay.
do I just get? What do I just get, Paul?
You're going to get assigned to a group.
Okay.
And that group will go separately so that we can hear the conversation a little bit. All right. But the idea of today around sources of strength, we can do it personally, but I thought what would be really interesting is to talk about the sources of strength of things that we've seen, heard, or experienced through programs. It could be your own program that you oversee, it could be grant managers, things you've seen in it, but wanting to bring positive stories to the connection of the strategic plan that we're working before we go in depth in terms of what it looks like, feels like, and the measurable outcomes that we've talked about yesterday in terms of that work. So does that conversation make sense? Just time to share and experience stories. Sally, Molly, Jared, and Andy. Oh, I also want to recognize Andy is also a source of strength trainer, far more advanced than us. Anything you want to say about that?
Yeah, I was trying to keep quiet until he told me that. So I was pulling it out. Yeah, but some of this stuff right here is very important. Actually, when we talked about it, we usually go to the schools, and this is probably the heart of it, because we ask the kids mostly what this belongs to them. Which one of these is what they recognize that all of these in this wheel here. So and then we try to get something out of them, like what does it bring, like physical health, why is it so important to you, stuff like that. We try to get the kids to talk and stuff like that. So we go around the room, and this is a great program. It's kind of like an icebreaker too, like he said. It brings kids out and let them talk and stuff like that. And usually before this, though, we always make rules about when we talk about when people are talking, you don't judge anybody and stuff like that. So
thank you.
That's very, very important, especially for kids these days, not to judge anybody.
So, yeah, I appreciate that. The other piece that reminded me of it is one of the big grounding pieces of this in the training is that you don't always have to have all 11 items all the time. The idea is having these items around the wheel help fill in when something isn't as strong. So maybe you're struggling in family life, right? Then the other things can come in and support. And so that's the idea, that you don't have to have everything all the time, right? Around that positivity.
Oh, I have a question.
Yeah.
So you said 11 items.
Did I count wrong?
Well, this wheel has 8, but I wondered if there was a different wheel that has maybe.
No, I just thought it was 11.
Oh, okay.
This looks like 11.
I was a math teacher. I'm just gonna leave that out there for a second. My kids do not ask me how to multiply because I usually screw it up, even though I was a math teacher. So I obviously can't count either. So. All right, so we're gonna, speaking of counting, so the folks that are helping lead are not gonna count off. Okay, so yeah, here we go, but we'll start here.
1, 2, 3. 1, 4.
4.
Okay.
1,
2, 3, 4.
1,
2, 3, 4. 1,
2, 3.
Are you guys going?
I'm thinking that we're gonna stay here.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So to beating your 4. So Jared, can you go with 4? Because I think the breakout group's already set there.
Yes.
All right, any questions? So we will come back forward. When do we want people back?
Can we do about 10 minutes?
Sure. Do about 10 minutes. The idea is just to share stories around it. When you share out a story, just try to connect it to it, because what I think you'll find is that it comes pretty easy. In that one. All right.
Boards, do we maybe want to go and break room next door, just so we can hear?
Yes.
All right, perfect. So,
And do we also have another?
Yeah, I can take
room?
threes.
all right. Sally, you want to go with threes?
Good.
Andy's one. Molly, it looks like you're two. Okay, and so threes go with Brian, and we'll see each other back here at 10:30.
So ones and twos stay here.
Or ones and twos stay here.
Okay.
Oh, take your wheel if you want. That's why I've been.
Oh, yeah.
It's hard to carry a PowerPoint.
I just opened the room.
Jared, are you good? Awesome.
This is not joining.
I want to be on that break room.
Oh, wait, the meeting's in there. Oh, yes.
Off the activity of walking the building twice. But we're gonna get going throughout the day. When you're in conversations, encourage you to keep sharing these positive stories with folks. I was just telling Melissa, this is one of my fears of like doing this activity and saying go. How do you bring people back when you start talking about cool stuff? So, Gordon. Thank you guys for participating. Hopefully.
Thank you all.
Okay, so this part actually, we'll get to move around a little bit because we want to give everybody about 10 minutes to just basically do a gallery walk, to walk around and see what's up on the walls, particularly folks that weren't here yesterday. I wanted to make sure you had a chance to see what's up there before we dive in. Quick orientation, so we put everything up in order. There are, do you mind going to the next slide? Yeah, so we've got in the strategic plan draft right now, there are 8 strategies. Each of those is printed up in one of these big poster pages, and it has the strategy. I'll use this as my example. We got the strategy, they're all numbered, the name of the strategy. These little symbols, hopefully folks have kind of seen the plan and maybe watched the video. That just is sort of a way that I try to connect it back to the 3 imperatives, which I'll quickly run over here. So our kind of high level goals in the plan: prevention and intervention, connection and change, equity and transparency. Just as a reference point, that's over here. And every one of the strategies connects to 1 or 2 or 3 of those imperatives in some way. Then you've got projects that make up the strategy. So we tried to break out, hey, what are all the sort of pieces that make this strategy up? And yesterday we spent a lot of time looking at these, reflecting on them, refining them, and that is on the poster, the sticky pad posters next to the strategy. So when you're walking around, it starts over here by where Brian is, strategy 1, 2, and 3, and then 4, 5, and 6 on this wall, and 7 and 8 over here. So if you want to move through in the order, that's how it flows. And just want to give folks a chance just to kind of look at things, get refreshed from, maybe no one got to actually participate in all the different conversations yesterday. So just a chance to look around. And if we want to get up and check things out, kind of however you want to do it, we'll come back together at 10 till. So in about 10 minutes, we'll actually get into breakout groups and we'll talk about how that's going to work. Does that sound good to everybody? All right, cool. Well, walk the gallery, please.
It's an art show.
Just.
You can bid on it. Or, yeah.
That's a good plan. Yeah.
There's no downside.
Any more is encouraged?
Yeah.
That's what I was telling them.
Have to go back here. We're going to go into the breakout. So let me just tell you what to do next. So here's what we're gonna do for the next hour. We're gonna do 2 rounds. And each of those, we're gonna have you choose between one of 4 strategies. So you can see here that we'll take about 20 minutes in each round for you and the folks that also want to talk about that particular strategy to look at the strategy and discuss what outcomes for that strategy might look like. What does it look like or feel like to be successful? How would we measure that? Quantitatively, qualitatively. The goal is to spend some time thinking about at the high level, the strategy. What does success look like? A couple of them, I think strategies 4 and 7 actually have some stuff in there. I meant to take it out and I left it because we were kind of brainstorming. We said, you know what? Let's talk about outcomes for the projects, but actually leave the strategy outcomes for the conversation today. So you could ignore what's in there, or you could sort of look at that one and say, oh, well, yeah, okay, this is on track. But have the conversation as you have ideas for, okay, here's a measure of success for this particular strategy. Here's an outcome. Just use the Post-it notes that are all over here and just stick the Post-it note up by the strategy on the poster. I think we have enough big stickies for now, so we'll just keep it to the Post-its. And you don't need to come up with 20 outcomes. Ideally, we want to try to figure out which, maybe 1 or 2 might be the things that really give us a good measure of success for the strategy. So we'll start by looking at the odd number strategies. So that's 1, strengthen council involvement, voice, and impact. 3, expanding awareness and understanding of Youth Development Oregon. 5, which is elevating efforts to prevent youth violence and justice system involvement. And 7, connecting youth and programs through data reporting and information sharing. And then we'll take 20 minutes. We'll come back together for 10 minutes and just have a very quick share out. You can just say, hey, we did this strategy and here are the outcomes that we've come up with. Or we cannot think of an outcome for this. It's horrible. Either way, you got 2 minutes. And then we'll do it again, but we'll take the even numbered strategies. So that's 2 over here, our sense of inclusion and professional development or belonging, depending on which version you're looking at, and YDO. Number 4, increasing alignment with other youth serving agencies. Number 6 in that corner, engage and share power with youth. And number 8, back on that wall, redesigning youth grants for accessibility, connectivity, and impact. So you get to pick one of the 4. We do want to make sure there is at least 1 staff and 1 council person in each conversation. So we might come and grab somebody if we have an imbalance there, but we don't want to just have staff talking about something and not anybody from the council. But we will let you, other than that, pick the one that you're most interested in. And ideally, you know, you'll want to be in that conversation for the duration, although if folks move around, I don't think that's the worst thing. But we're going to just do the first 4, come back together, and then we'll do the next 4, come back together, and then we'll do a debrief at the very end. Any questions about that?
Picking of the odds.
Odds first. So strategies 1, 3, 5, and 7. So here, there. We ought to have big numbers on these. They're kind of hard to read from here. And then 7's over there. 1, 3, 5, and 7. And find the one you want to go talk about.
Your stickies.
And I will prepare the duck to let us know when it's time to come back and debrief. highlights, maybe noting the 2 or 3 outcomes that you are most sort of like feeling are strong outcomes to use for the strategy. I will go ahead and go in numerical order and start with number 1, strengthening council involvement, voice impact. Anybody can report out. And I'm gonna go tight 2 minutes.
We will support you.
So we had a really, I think, a really strong conversation around strengthening council involvement, which shifted to, because Brian put this thing, 30+ member council, 50% plus youth, 18 to 27. I think it's a lofty goal, which is awesome. Sorry, I didn't mean to put your name on it. I thought it was fair. You're the director, you get a
I gave that
name on
one
it.
to them too.
Which led us to a conversation around how do we create engagement and impact for council members? So meetings are meetings and required by law, right? We recognize that. But how do we create the impact opportunity for the council members? And then on top of that, how do we create relationships? And so obviously I had the experience of going to youth days, which was a cool engagement opportunity. Ann and I both did. It's something that can't happen every quarter. I don't think Brian wants us to have that happen every quarter, right? But how do we create that kind of interaction and that opportunity, both during the council meetings, but outside of that time, recognizing that all has an impact on time and access. A question I asked that kind of started the question was, does it make sense as council members are joining to have council members join staff when we're out in the community doing things such as the convening, such as site visits, to learn on that? And Chris's question was awesome. She was like, what does that impact on staff? I'm like, I always travel with staff. So adding one person isn't really a big, but how do we set up systems that could work was one of the things that we kind of talked about. What else am I forgetting?
So when we talked about the sort of intersection of this strategy and youth engagement and support for our youth leaders, we talked a lot about how are we exploring the structure of how we do meetings and building in time for fun and joy and engagement, because it's a lot of sit and get. And I think for some of our youth, where it might be their first time in Salem, it might be their first time at, having a state level policy conversation. There's a lot of support that happens through our youth committee, right, in terms of providing differentiated support. But I wonder, as we were thinking of different ideas to break the ice, to build that connection, to also build a recruitment strategy to build it and like expand our youth membership. How are we thinking about the structure of our meetings to further engage and support youth in that?
And can I have one last kind of actionable item that we talked about, was to capture some of the conversations. What was it? What do we call, like, the video person?
We're thinking like
Infomercial.
Infomercial kind of concepts as we go into community conversations. Like, how do we capture that? Not the 2-hour conversation of us talking and engaging, but capture the really cool thing. And people do that, right? That's something that is kind of a more actual item that we talked about. So just making it exciting for the work that we do, because it's like,
Cool, thank you.
Okay, we can ask a question.
yeah.
So is there an outcome? So if I hear the conversation, so is there something, what does success look like around those conversations, around relationships?
So things that we put on the post-it notes, recruiting, like the infomercial, with all that kind of means.
Like creating
Something, so actionable item, outcome, videos, increasing the 30 plus member, but then also, I think we probably should add this to a post-it note. How do we move our meetings less from sit and get to incorporating other things? Jared talked about the scavenger, like a scavenger hunt around the Capitol, like the impact that could be for fun for anybody. So
an
actual
restructured meeting.
Yeah.
And Jocelyn had also shared like opportunities to think about how we tell our story using different mediums. So I know Paul mentioned video, but I know you mentioned like other like forms, written, small excerpts, pictures, to tell that story, a visual note taker, thinking about ways to tap into all the different types of learners as a way to expand counselor involvement.
All right, thank you. Can we go to strategy 3, expanding awareness and understanding of YDO?
Okay, so some of the things that we came here around was kind of talking about how a lot of our grantees, our nonprofits know about us, but going further than that in regards to letting people know what YDO does, right? One of the things we talked about was perhaps increasing the number of applications, but knowing that there's a limit there also in regards to the funding, right? And that kind of push and pull. And we could get our name out there more, but is it worth to have that many more applications when less will be funded, right? That balance. I guess increasing involvement of YDC in your decision-making tables or spaces, right? The initiative focused on opportunity youth, the statewide initiative. Discuss the continuing the partnering kind of with other organizations or being at those tables, for example, if some other agency, right? And the thing that came to mind was maybe OHA had some sort of event where they had a convening, right? What if we were there at their convening and presented on something, right? You know, one issue is housing, but we provide programming that could be done in some of these places that provide housing because our youth are there, right? Fund more grantees by partnering with other organizations and agencies. I think was something else. I don't know if you want to talk about that.
I think that was, sure. We get so many wonderful applications, far more than we can fund. There are other granting organizations, both at the state and foundations that fund similar work. Is there a vehicle or a way to share some of those proposals with other entities so that we can extend that funding to more grantees? I don't know whether the state can do that, but it's something that our local county foundation does, and it's very successful.
Being a connector to other
Funders, yeah.
What does it here? Incentivize or increase shared meetings and grantee convenings with other funders, organizations, and agencies. And then have 30 or more council members, it looks like, is also something that's up there. And then something that's also is, again, around this convening, but having a convening where we recognize kind of our nonprofits perhaps, right? Where we say, these are who we fund and this is the great work. We're basically nonprofits out there who to show off. You know, those are some things that we kind of talk about.
That's excellent. I mean, I think as I'm listening to some of these, like what you have isn't necessarily giving like the quantitative thing, but I think a lot of those translate. Like when I think about like the idea of trying to share unfunded applications, to me, it could be like identify one community organization interested in partnering to share information about unfunded organizations. Like that's tangible, you know, and if we can just say, hey, let's just try to achieve this once, that even counts. I think, so there's kind of just noting that like, actually, you know, my hope was 1 or 2, but I feel like this is great because a lot of these still translate to things we can measure, and that is the goal. Passing it over to strategy 5, I'm gonna switch up to my closest approximation of a beaver sound for activity purposes.
Thank you.
Alright.
That'll be tough now. All right, strategy 5, I'm gonna do the report out, is elevate efforts to prevent violence and justice system involvement. There were several things on here that are just like, you know, complete development of juvenile detention guidelines. So there's just some stuff that are just date driven, right? So we won't go over all those. An ultimate outcome measure, when you think about this, is a reduction in youth gun deaths, whether by homicide or suicide. And then we also thought like one of the main things on here is that's kind of structural before you can do a lot of the other stuff is what are the incidences of gun violence? There is a lot of publicly available data on them. A lot of police agencies do that. There's juvenile justice data on it, but it's all disparate. It's not together. So the idea of, I wasn't here yesterday, but I guess talked about mini grants, like maybe as a public health model, going to a PSU or something, doing a mini grant to have that data collated together. So the end measure of that is, do you have a product where you know incidences and the, needs around the state in one spot. We talked a lot about community and individual, so you're looking at reduction in referrals. So that's both a youth-based and a community-based measure. You're looking at a reduction in recidivism, so that's youth already involved, are they recidivating or not? And then also a reduction in probation violations. So that goes into some of the stuff that's on here in terms of probation reform strategy. So it may not be that they're not engaging in the same behavior, but it's how is the system responding to those violations in a different way that's maybe going to hit at a reduction. So, and then, let's see. Oh yeah, and then some of the stuff on here too is about JCP planning and putting together those community plans, and there's statutory requirements for community involvement. But that's just like the bar, right? We hope that people go over that bar. So tracking like how many community partners were involved in that planning and how many community partners do the plans impact. So
Perfect.
that is not a beaver sound. I don't know what.
That's not a beaver call?
What was that? What was that?
Is there any other beavers here? Come on. Thank you.
I'll look for something else.
So there's all there is, like there's the this, right? Come on.
Good chainsaw.
All right. Did I miss anything, Lee?
I don't know what a beaver sounds like. I don't know if there's like a built-in sound, like
I don't think so.
that's the tails hitting the ball.
Hitting the marimba.
It's just this, they slap, you get the big tail and they just slap it down.
I'll have to,
We
We have to
literally
just
do this at the
manually
football
do that
games.
with a
like,
beaver.
gang of beavers.
But no, you're saying-
I'm not gonna buy a ringtone. I'm not buying a
Not
ringtone for
expensive
that.
ringtone.
All right, ours are gonna be short, because we got like two. So I'll share out. Strategy 7, connecting youth and programs through data reporting and information sharing, lightly attended, probably because coming up with outcomes for data sharing is really hard. This is one of the questions, one of the prompts is what strategies are really difficult to generate outcomes for. We had a really, I think, robust discussion about just what a lot of this stuff really is driving at, which is better coordination and data sharing between us, our agency partners, and our programs. We did identify 2 outcomes. Some of the projects here really focused on re-engagement and data sharing around re-engagement. And so establishing a percentage of our re-engagement grantees who have actual data sharing arrangements with local districts or schools, not just partnerships or a letter of intent, but actual access to drop lists or access to data where they can in real time see youth who are leaving the K-12 schools in their area and are able to do outreach. And there's a lot of projects that really drive at that being something we can measure. We also talked about the fact that I think while we're looking for outcomes, I think some strategies, this one in particular, are probably more oriented to outputs or products. And I think that a big one around this would be just some more comprehensive outward-facing reporting about our grants, broadly speaking. I mean, being able to both, I mean, there's a discussion in the projects about the questions that drive what we collect. And are we answering questions that other agencies or lawmakers have? And can we put that reporting out back to those folks in a way that is informing them? Yeah. So if we're getting information on why youth are disconnecting, which we collect right now in re-engagement grants, are we, who's seeing that? You know, we share it, but ODE might benefit from knowing why kids are leaving and why we collect that data. And with that, we're done with round one. All right, thank you. I'm gonna look for another ringtone for the next round. Maybe any other colleges anybody wants to represent.
We can do the Western Wolves.
Bulldogs are great.
It's gotta be a wolf.
There's I'll do a dog, yeah.
I was a rainbow.
Yeah.
University of Hawaii.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not just a rainbow.
Oh, I know, that's a rainbow.
There was no sound.
All right.
That's hilarious.
Call my Rainbow Warriors back to the center for a second. We have one more round. Our plan is to break at 12 for lunch. Don't look at that clock, it's wrong. I'm gonna fix it before we leave today, if that's okay with the juvenile department. But do we need like a 2-minute pause? Do folks need a minute, or should we just jump into the next round? All right, if you need personally 2 minutes, take them. We're gonna go into another conversation. So now we're looking at strategies 2, 4, 6, and 8 doing the same thing. So 2 is over here on this wall, 4 is in that corner, 6 is in that corner, and 8 is right there under the screen behind Brian and my stomach. All right, so we're gonna do a quick share out from each of the groups on outcomes, and then we'll take a break, get some lunch, have a chat. I'm gonna pass it to strategy 8. If you want to do a real quick report out on the outcomes you talked about.
Oh, I'm going? All right. I'm not doing very good with those goes today. So strategy 8 is the redesign youth grants for accessibility, connectivity, and insurance. Shocker, I'm at this one. Couple things that we talked about, like measurable outcomes, was to build an actual list, our email list focused on community engagement and the RFA or grants. So right now, if you want to get our grant information, you sign up to the council information on the email list to look in to see if we can actually get a specific category that people sign up. I see head nods from grant managers already, because then we can actually track the statistics on who's accessing those emails and all that stuff. And the other one that we had is to build in expectations around not just the convenings for re-engagement and workforce, but building a requirement essentially in the grant agreement to require our current grantees to come to our community conversations. Many of them do, but by strengthening that language in the grant agreement, there's already some human contact between, I'm a new grantee and you're a grantee who's been successful. It's a lot harder to kind of push somebody to the side if they have questions about how to become a grantee for us. If it's not from via email, if you're in human, it's going to be a different engagement conversation. Like, how did I capture it? Dan disappeared. All right, did I capture it?
I think so.
Okay. Good. There you go.
Awesome, thank you. Strategy 6.
Yeah, so engage and share power with youth. Some of the outcomes we talked about was having a better geographic view in terms of where our council youth are coming from. And then better youth retention on the council, and that can be done through better, just providing additional better support, increased number of youth council members, which has been on many of these, empowering youth to tell their stories. Tabidi mentioned it would be cool to contract with youth, and whether that be in like advocacy settings within YDO or outside of that, that could be something that we could explore. And then also having a youth-driven agenda, which would result in like better or more efficient and effective programming. Youth problems are evolving, and the idea around this is that, you know, what youth needed 5 years ago is very different from what they need right now. And so making sure that our priorities are staying up to date.
Cool, thank you. Strategy 4.
I think it's me. So again, strategy 4 was focused on increasing alignment with youth serving agencies. I think overall in general, our group talked a lot about, as we examine all the different important connections we need to make across different agencies and commissions, it's important to have a shared vision and goal. Sort of what's our North Star for youth, and then clearly articulate how each of these agencies intersect with that work and really clarify roles and responsibilities. And in doing that work, thinking about our system of engagement and partnership and collaboration, how are we addressing the siloing we're seeing? What does that mean in terms of improved services for our grantees and most importantly, our youth? And then again, especially if a project intersects with multiple agencies, thinking about the policies, rules, and processes that are supporting that work in coordination and what might potentially be getting in the way of that work. And some of the examples, and this came up yesterday, we brought some of that back into the conversation today. I was thinking about for our grant programs that may not have enough funding to cover some of the workforce development pieces. How are we supporting our youth in being able to have a navigator help support them with some of the workforce development pieces beyond the extent and scope of a current program? And then Molly, did you want to share one of your examples about like where we're seeing gaps in support and service? And this is an example of an unintended impact of a current policy.
Yeah, sure. So we were talking about the alignment work is also about identifying the gaps. So for example, we would have GED completers, so teenagers at the community college, but how many were really able to access the Oregon Promise to continue into college? And the numbers were so small because just got my GED, I want to be in my own apartment, I've got to get a job, I've got all these other things. And so we would see that they really were not able to access the Oregon Promise. And so better understanding that in terms of working across agency and organizations to find where those gaps are and where we can better support the youth in those areas.
And Molly, to add context, sorry, to the youth, the Oregon Promise piece, there's a 6-month window, if I remember correctly, of accessing from when you complete to do it. So there's some legislative pieces that are hidden there, just to add context to.
Unintended consequence,
consequence.
but for the youth that a lot of our programs are serving, it's a big piece.
And then to lift up another contribution from our director, right? A potential idea to create a state agency committee or work group that helps with this coordination. And to add a layer to that, thinking about where we have momentum. So for example, Alcohol Drug Policy Commission and the Oregon System of Care, we have some great momentum in those partnerships. How do we hold on to that momentum and build on that to continue to build more coherence so it's clear for grantees, it's clear for youth? What does that continuum of support and service look like in their journey to becoming successful, thriving, independent young adults that are gainfully employed and just thinking more holistically with that?
Awesome. Thank you. We'll wrap up with strategy 2.
All right, I'm going to ask you for the off, Justin, all right? So in regards to build and maintain a sense of inclusion and professional development, something that was brought up was, for this to happen, and I want to take a look at this, is kind of the necessity of having the other 2 strategies. Strategy 1, which is strengthen council involvement, voice and impact, and expand awareness and understanding. Realize this can't happen without those 2. Something that we came across. Another idea is in regards to the sense of inclusion, in regards to at least with youth involvement, is maybe in our agreements, make it a requirement for our grantees to have a youth be involved in something more so on the council level, whether that be youth committee, for example, right? But that's an idea that was discussed in this one. Is what you wrote, Brian? Conducting a Gallup or similar poll in 2025 or 2026, specifically around the inclusion and professional development of YDL.
So with the youth coming from the programs that we sponsor and fund, more of an ambassador, not necessarily a direct requirement. We don't want to force someone into something, but we want to expose them to a different table. And with that, we can learn from them as well, because now we have someone at the table who is on the very, foot level of what they're doing, so we can have that story told to us, and maybe even use that story in legislative meetings to get some of the things that we may need as well. So just having that partnership between our grantees and using that resource, because there's a ton of youth here that can strengthen our council in that area as well, would be beneficial. So those are some of the things that we kind of looked at.
To build off what Lawrence was saying, I think part of that came to mind with the thought of, I think across these conversations we've had, I've captured that it's like kind of hard for youth to be involved and what kind of role they can take. And I think having that ambassador type of program would allow them to already have a direct impact and a direct kind of pass and see that streamline of oh, I'm from this community or from this organization and I know what is happening, and being able to advocate for that in here, as well as the other part. I think specifically when we talk about youth that are impacted, there's a lot of need for mentorship, and to be able to grow that here, I think would be great. I was, not to call out Janelle, but I was with Janelle, and I think it was we have very different interactions just because of our age gap. And I think when we're able to have more youth on the council, there's more sense of belonging with the youth and bigger involvement, and hopefully that goes up. And as more youth get involved with Brian's great idea of building it by 50% youth, it would allow for youth to be a little bit more incorporated, and I feel more motivated to be involved and make a difference and know what, just now I'm blabbering.
Can I ask a question? I think I overheard you also kind of talking about mentorship a little bit, and so is that also part of it?
Yeah, I feel like I created a whole program of these different strategies of I think with this circle, there's a big part that we talked about, and specifically I've talked about, where mentorship has been a pretty big part in my life, and I think it serves a big purpose in youth's lives. And there's a whole bunch of great people here that have a lot of social capital, that have a lot of different experiences, and I think tying that back in this conversation, we talked about even doing the buddy system of do we do a youth council member that is older with the youth, and that's a way to you have someone to go to if you have questions, or that mentorship, and provide that to be able to not just yes, I'm involved in this, but it's also used as a way to grow development wise, and that will impact that youth life. So yeah.
I'm gonna stick that one on there. Well, thank you everybody for that. Good news. It's time for lunch. So we'll take a break. We've got about 30 minutes, I think, on the agenda. So everybody can get some food, and then I think we want to try to maybe have a very casual sort of conversation, give a chance for some of the folks, especially those who are leaving the council, to share, impart some wisdom if you would, or just tell some jokes, whatever. Lunchtime. I don't know where it starts, so
I'm encouraging any and all questions. But I will say that Maricela, and she said this the other day, has been on the council for about 8 years, and is our current chair, and it's kind of coming up at the end of the calendar year for 2 full terms. So just want to acknowledge that. And also Zan is, I can't remember if you're coming up on the either end of a term or what, but I know that you aren't running for re-election. And it is important for us to have an elected official on our council and on our state advisory group. And so Zan will not fill that as a person who's not going to be running for office or has been elected to office. And I think with other commitments and just other things, I think we'll probably term off essentially, right, Zan? Or whatever term we want
There's
to
an
use.
option of, what, you stay on for a year, or I can break it up.
So we want you to stay. We want you to stay. So we'll keep, and we have done this to other people probably sitting around the table, where we keep you on even if you aren't 100% able to stay involved, because we want to keep you on the list and then figure out your replacement. And it can take a year to find a replacement for some of these specific positions, or in the case of our John T. law enforcement, it's taken us 3 years. And we've had a couple year gets. Benton County Sheriff was ready, but then he had some other things come up. So it's not like we haven't been trying, and we've gotten some really good ideas, but it doesn't always take. So we're not here to talk about all of that, but I figured just wanted to give Maricela and Zan, Parasa, also somebody who's coming up to the end of her 4-year term, will continue for a 2nd term. Tabidi is also coming up on the end of his 1st term, will continue. I'm saying, is he there? Yeah, I'm just gonna say he's gonna continue.
He's away from his computer right now.
And we also have some newer folks in the room, so this is just an opportunity for those who, maybe if there's questions for those sort of members who've been here for a while, but also if there's anything, any wisdom, words of wisdom that you want to share in your time at the council. This is the moment for that for the next, I don't know, 15, 20 minutes. So maybe I'll ask our chair to.
I don't know if these are words of wisdom, but I think something that has really resonated with me in my time on the council is that we don't have to do everything, and we're not the people to do everything, right? Like there's certain entities that can do certain things better, and I think there's so much need that sometimes we get caught up in this, like, oh, we have to do housing, we have to do mental health, we have to do education, like so many things. And so that has been something that I've had to remind myself, like, you know, these are our priorities, these are the things we can do well. And then let's see, also recognizing that as a council, I feel like things run a little bit slower than we'd like. Yeah, and so like having to remind myself, like, we don't have to have a resolution right now, but we need to be working towards one. That's really important for me.
And maybe I'll ask each of you too. I've gotten to know Maricela a little bit over the past year or so as she's been chair. Maybe I think it would be interesting for both staff and other council members to know what you do day to day. I mean, so I'll ask each of those council members, like, because now I know what Maricela actually does, and we sometimes talk about what she does for work. So say what you do day to day.
Yeah, so I am the development manager for Latino Network. A lot of people know a little bit about Latino Network, but they don't know like the grand scale of the work that we do. We have almost 300 employees. We have an amazing development team of 6, which is for a nonprofit, like so crazy. I came from an environmental nonprofit where I spent about 5 years, and I was their development director there. The budget was much lower than what LotNet has right now. And then for my day-to-day, I focus on like major gifts. I do a lot of communications, grants, funding, donor advice funds, just connecting with folks. Yeah.
You also were doing the C6 work.
Oh, yes. So we also have a 501c4 and a PAC, which is very, very new for us. And so prior to me coming to Latino Network, they had the C4 for several years, but really hadn't done much with it. And so since then, we have like probably quadrupled the budget. And we've really, I've been able to spend a good chunk of my time fundraising for the C4 and specific candidates that we endorse. I've learned a lot there, and I think there's still a lot of learning to do, and just like pushing funders to consider granting to C4s. I think places like Northwest Health Foundation, they'll do it, not really OCF, but some of these funders like want folks to engage more in political work, advocacy, but then they're very like closed-minded around like, oh, we don't want to grant C4s. And so I think here in Oregon anyways, we've had to really push funders. So like based on your RFP, it sounds like this is the work you're trying to do. And so I've really been focusing on that probably last year.
Do people know that like a 501c3 is like a traditional community nonprofit, and a 501c4 is like a political action committee and political advocacy entity?
Yeah, 501c4, a lot of people think it's only political work, but you're actually still required to have, it's kind of like a gray area because you have to do a certain amount of like C3 permissible activities. And so it's very like specific. Like if we've reached our hours for like campaigning, field work, or like any like political work, then we like the bulk of our work cannot be political. And so yeah, so still learning there, and yeah, it's been really great.
I wanted to say, for one, thank you. I really enjoyed this time with the Youth Development Council. I always learn something when I come to a meeting, and I just really enjoy the people around the table. The commonality of mission and eagerness to change the lives of youth in our communities. I would say that for me, there's been incredible progress in the youth development division of youth development overall since I became a council member. I feel like there is much more coordination across the elements of the program. There's more engagement with the community, much more of an emphasis on reaching out beyond just the core grant making function, and so I feel like it's really matured well, and that's exciting to see. I remember when the conversation about working with partners was just getting ODE to understand what we get, and I think it's gone beyond that, and it's wonderful to see that. It's wonderful to see where we are now, and I think where we can be if we actually do all the work that is reflected here in the strategic plan. So that's fantastic. I think we've been an underappreciated resource in the state for way too long. In my day-to-day life, I am ending my second term as a county commissioner. So I've been a county commissioner for 8 years. And prior to that, I was in a small nonprofit environmental group as the executive director. So some of my son's experience resonates with me. We didn't have a development director. It was that and that and the other at the time. But as a commissioner, I have so much broader canvas and community well-being as measured by what's going on in our juvenile department, or the roads, or natural areas and parks, or our health clinics and public health. You know, there's so much that we do. And I just try to keep in mind this lovely sources of strength kind of figure, regardless of what work we're doing and how our county programs supporting community, supporting individuals, and not making it harder.
Sure, absolutely. I also wanted to thank Maricela and Dan for your service to the council. I feel like how you bring your both personal and professional experience has just continued to enrich a lot of our conversations, and I think in particular about the youth committee work and the commitment there, and ways in which we are supporting one another and pushing our work to better consider, like, where are there barriers? Where do we need to continue to move? What are things that potentially get in the way of the work that we can work through? And the work is ongoing. It's a never-ending marathon, not a sprint. And I just want to appreciate and show so much gratitude for, again, both of you and your service, and generosity of that spirit and service to the council. So for me, I am ending my first term, and I told Brian just a moment ago, if you still want me, I'll continue. And he's like, yes, absolutely. And I think what's been really exciting is just, again, seeing the team at YDO expand over the last several years, thinking about how we're continuing to center racial equity in our work and consider how our system creates and addresses disparities, thinking about how do we leverage our strategic plan, our policy work, our grant program, and like technical assistance work for grantees. The more I continue to serve on the council, I'm getting a clearer picture of what that looks like in operation. And then knowing that you're such a nimble team and you wear multiple hats, thank you for all the work that you do, because so much is expected of you. And oftentimes the level of support that you need is not reciprocated by the state. And so we recognize that, and we want to continue to support and advocate for you and expanding capacity and sustainable funding over time, because the work is essential. We're able to see the impact of the work, and it continues, right? And those are all important glimmers of hope when I think about everything that's happening. I'm excited to continue to serve on the YDO, and in my other work outside of being a member of the council, I am the Senior Director of Policy and Advocacy at the Coalition of Oregon School Administrators. So that our membership organization, we represent and support district superintendents, folks in central office administration, folks that are in building level leadership, so principals, vice principals, assistant principals. And a lot of my scope of work, and we're a team of two, so we understand the need to wear multiple hats and be nimble and adaptive. A lot of it is engaging in the legislative process and helping education leaders engage in that process, as well as the regulatory process when it comes to K-12. And I feel like my role here is thinking about how do we help with the alignment, thinking about who's missing at the table and who needs to be at the table. And also pushing our members to really think more holistically and be inclusive of youth and youth-centered partnerships in our work, because we can't do this work alone. In isolation, it is impossible. So I'm really hopeful about the work ahead. I'm excited about continuing to serve.
I wonder, I don't know if Jenny or Yoselin or Kim, I think Taviti's online. I don't know if y'all have anything you want to share or ask, but the floor is yours.
I have questions I want to ask. So earlier, Jen, you kind of talked about things that you saw improve on IDEO, and I wanted to ask that question of Marcella. So in your 8 years now, what are some of the things that you felt like when you came in, you're like, oh, this is kind of annoying or frustrating, and then you've seen an improvement on? I think it kind of gives some perspective for the rest of us who are just starting.
Yeah, my pause is not to say that you guys are amazing. But I think when I first joined the council, I was very like detached, like I had no idea what was going on. And so I don't feel like I can accurately speak to that. But I will say, like, with all of the staff here, I really, like, I can tell how much you care about the work that we're doing as a council, but also like our grantees. And I feel like that, just like that level of appreciation and like dedication has probably been like the most like beneficial change that I've seen. In terms of like the specifics of what we passed, I don't know that I can speak to that. Yeah.
Maybe a different question would be, what have you been able to accomplish in the last 8 years?
Yeah.
Like, what is one positive thing that you're like, I felt like it was all for good because I at least did this 1 or 2 things and made the world a better place kind of thing.
Yeah, I would say with the youth committee meetings that we've had, just being a part of that and kind of seeing the impact we've had on youth has been really rewarding, specifically our incarcerated youth. Being able to support them and let them know, like, you're not alone, like, we didn't forget about you and your voice still matters, I think has been like the most impactful thing that I've been a part of on the council. Also like elevating like the voices of like past youth, like Isatu, who was a refugee, and hearing her experience and helping her find her voice. And the same with Diana, who focused on like youth experiencing like farm worker housing and those issues. For me, I've always felt very passionate about elevating like the issues that foster youth experience, just because I feel like are like a whole nother level. Like if it's bad for youth that have some little bit of support, like those youth that have none, like it's extremely difficult for them to kind of get over those humps. And so I feel very good about like leading the council, just because I know that we have new youth coming on board that can speak to a lot of those same issues. And also like just increasing the voice for like Native American youth who like living on reservations is very, very different from the rest of the youth that we are serving. Yeah, so I think that's been my biggest like accomplishment or like thing that I participated in.
If you want specifics, I think the engagement with tribal governments has definitely increased. And I'm sorry, Andy's not here, but we'd love to hear from him on that. That's one area of greater richness, and there's more ambition to move further in that direction. The ability, the readiness, and the recognition from the legislature that YDO had a role to play for Future Ready Oregon was a big thing. Legislature kind of paid a whole lot of attention to us when I first came on board, other than being ready to receive federal money. And now the state's investing. So that is great. There's, again, tons more work to do, and because legislators turn over so much, it's always more relationship building to do. And I think we talked a lot about data when I first came on board, but now we're actually collecting more data, thinking more systematically about data, thinking about what kinds of questions we want to answer, and not just collecting the data for data's sake. So thank you, Lawrence and team. And so it's great that we just have the richer resources and are able to actually dig deeper into some of these aspirational goals that at the time were much more of a if we only kind of a conversation when I first started with the council.
Martha, anything from you? No? Like that?
I feel like the both of you did a really nice job covering like work that the council should continue to be proud of and continue in our operations and our support. The other thing that I'm thinking about as I'm reflecting on our strategic plan process is we're thinking about how do we provide that support, especially for new members that are coming on, so that you have that sort of onboarding support, that you're understanding how the work gets operationalized. And I think that foundational piece is going to be key. So I feel like this time to do retreat planning and consider like where we've gone, where we want to go, where do we want to see more improvement, building in those processes so that they're super intentional, I think has been huge progress for the council, because it brings us all around the same table with staff and council members. And then I know some different partners have been able to join from different agencies too. And I think that helps us continue to refine our work together and how we talk about it. And then building off of what you shared on Future Ready, Zan, and our grant programs, I feel like I've also seen huge growth in how we communicate about our grant programs. And now it's like, okay, how do we level up and continue to take that a step further? Because there's a lot of mistrust in government and public agencies. And I think part of our work as we think about how we talk about the YDO and the council and the work we do, how do we show the work that's been happening among our grantees to show that they are not only good stewards of public dollars, so are we, and building that trust in what we do so that we can continue to grow and build on that investment. And I think our communication around that has come a long way, and we're going to continue to push that with the sort of foundation of refinements to our plan too.
I'll loop back to the strategic plan. The last strategic planning exercise that I took part in was the one where we met at Portland State University years ago. It was right before the pandemic hit, and it's a different group around the table. And it's a really weird thing being one of the old timers.
Seasoned.
Yeah, you know, the time went by very, very fast. But as a result of that strategic planning exercise, we totally changed the committees that we have. And one of the things I guess we probably need to think about again is, are the committees the right committees in order to support this strategic plan? I have been very engaged in committee work. And I really enjoyed that aspect because you really don't get to know what this entity does unless you participate that way. So I would encourage anyone that's new to become engaged, and I think that's one way to onboard some of the newer board members is to catch them early and put them into some of that work. When I first joined, the committees were almost inactive. The only one that was really active was Ina's juvenile committee, and so it was harder to become involved.
Yeah, I agree. I did not participate in any of the committees, or I don't know that they were happening, aside from like the committee and then later on down the road, Juvenile Justice Committee, which I found extremely helpful and rewarding. So getting folks tied into that early.
Jocelyn or Jenny, any questions, comments?
I mean, it's really great to hear this reflection, actually.
Yeah.
I think that's like, I don't know, it just kind of sets a tone to like, okay, we are building on a lot of great work and having the moment to really just like let that sink in from the service that you all have made to this organization over the last several years. And I think about like, Zan, you're talking about the Future Ready and like the spotlight that's shown on YDO, and that funding is sunsetting. And so what's the opportunity
to continue that great work. Where are there, I mentioned yesterday, like, what's the state's plan with cannabis money? What's the, like, how can programs like that continue, with changing funding sources? So yeah, I think a lot about what are the opportunities coming up, I'm really excited about the connection piece across state agencies and really looking to align even with the private philanthropy. I think in the coming years, we are going to see a change in public dollars. And what does that mean for communities that are serving young people with public dollars? It's going to mean more private foundation funding, and it's going to mean more foundation partnerships with agencies like this. And so I think that needs to also kind of be on the radar.
Yeah, how can we anticipate those gaps in the future?
Yeah, I'll be short.
All good.
But yeah, it's really exciting to be here and thrilling. I think especially as a newer member, this was very insightful to figure out like where these priorities are. And my head has been, I was telling Jenny earlier, it's just like popping off with all of these different ideas. And I feel like I personally am building excitement, and I see that there's a lot of potential to build excitement, not just for everyone else here, but also like really engaging the youth. And that is really exciting to me, and something that I think is like a really great priority, obviously, as we work with youth initiatives, and just that is our focus. So I'm excited to see like what my role is in that, and seeing how to engage other folks to be able to move these conversations forward and work on the work that has already been done and just needs to be expanded, and see where that goes. But yeah, I'm really thankful for all the work that has been passed down and everything that's going on, and the impact that has to the future of this council and to the youth that we're impacting. So
Thank you. Okay, I have one more question, and then we'll move. So I'd be interested, and you've got to keep it kind of short because it's 1 o'clock, but I just think it would be interesting for the council members here. Why did you join the council? And for those who are, a few years in, has that changed or evolved in the time? Like, oh, now I know why. And I thought this, but now I think this. But the newer people, I'd be interested just for the benefit, for why you're here, what's your why. So
yeah, I'll go ahead and start. Yeah. I mean, I'm a person of color, and it's not something that, isn't obvious. And I think that was like my first thing of like being, I'm not that young anymore, but I am, I was 29, but going, but yeah, it has had me reflect a lot on my experience as being a youth in Oregon, and specifically just thinking about everyone around me in my community, and also like all the work and experiences that I've had, specifically to the places that I've been a part of with like nonprofits in Portland and other places. So I think that was like my initial want of just being interested of like, yeah, anything to, that focuses on marginalized communities and expanding resources that in communities that are like historically disinvested in or don't have something to start with was my main motivation. And I think off of this, it's been more, I don't know, I feel like I'm more like now youth focused, and I don't know if that's because I'm seeing that personal tie within myself, but I'm more motivated for that. And I think that is evolving for me, as well as, with the information that I'm gathering and being able to understand that more. And I feel like that's, taking me somewhere else, and that's great. Yeah.
Anybody can go next?
Go. I first joined the council because I started getting more involved in foster care, DHS advocacy work. I didn't know it was advocacy work at the time. I was like shadowing and would meet with youth in their placement, obviously with a caseworker. And I learned a lot, but also I felt like I taught them a lot, like I don't want to get in the details, but just like things that maybe adults don't see. And so I got the opportunity to apply for YDC, and initially I was like, no, I'm not doing that. I don't have time. You know, I was in school, living on my own, working 2 jobs at that time. And then like near the deadline, I was like, okay, I'm gonna just submit the application, see what happens. And having access to people in this space, I think is really important for youth, because it kind of helps like just seeing yourself in those positions, but also realizing like this doesn't feel so like far-fetched anymore. Like being able to interact with like judges, all of you really, like professionals in your field, it kind of made it feel like more realistic in a way. And also like, I think it gave a lot of value to like your lived experience that other people maybe can't speak on. So I think that's why I initially joined. And then why I've continued to stay, I think is because there is still a lot of work to be done. And I think it's hard to complain if you are not actively working towards like fixing the systems that youth face. And yeah, that's what I see.
For me, I was recruited. As Brian said, there is a role, especially because of our mandate from the federal government for the juvenile crime prevention program, to have a commissioner on board. And my predecessor on the board of commissioners for Benton County was actually the YDC rep prior to me. And Molly Rogers was very convincing. And so I said, sure. But the reason I've stayed and become as engaged as I have is because it is an area where I do feel we're investing upstream. And so many of the programs that we are involved in are after the fact and trying to, and that just doesn't work as well. So it's really rewarding to be able to help focus on programs and investments that help youth and families early on rather than after life has gone awry. And the other is that the emphasis on racial and ethnic disparities here in this council is more genuine than on any other board or council or committee I serve on, and I serve on lots of them. And it has always been a great place to have conversations, sometimes tough conversations, and to learn. And I appreciate the authenticity with which that conversation occurs in this body. And I wish it were the same everywhere else.
I think for me, so I initially applied, I think in 2016. It was 2 directors ago, actually. And I was very interested because the nonprofit I was at, we were interested in considering how are we involved in the conversations around juvenile justice and youth development and the intersections with K-12. And so that was like one job ago too. And I think, with the transitions, I actually didn't hear anything until it was like right before the pandemic, probably 2018, 2019. And they're like, hey, we do have an opening. If you're still interested, we'd love for you to just, move forward with the process. And so, again, I just being young and really bright-eyed, I didn't know what I was walking myself into. You know, I was like, oh, there's probably like yeah, there we go. We hit the power. I had actually no idea what exactly I was walking myself to. I had read the policy briefs, you know, you don't really know until you're in it, right? And what I've appreciated in this first term too is just how generous the team has been with their time and working alongside you to meet you where you're at, to think about where your interests are, what are the questions you have, and like how that intersects with your, that time, that generosity of time, I haven't seen on many other councils and boards. And in many cases, there are some boards where they don't want board members to be overly active, right? They're like, you know, I'm gonna say that very strategically, right? And so I've just really appreciated the team engaging with every member of the council, meeting them where they're at, and having, like what Zan was saying, those really hard conversations, and talking about what is and what isn't, like perception versus reality, ideally what we'd like to have, but what are current systemic challenges, so that not only we're keeping those in mind and how do we problem solve that together, but what are some things we need to consider about addressing some of the systemic barriers that we face. And then what I've also really appreciated is our focus on prevention and intervention. And I feel like thinking about the connections of like what we do in our current system and how in some ways our system is pushing our youth out on the K-12 side, right? How do we continue to make systemic improvements and supports, and how we have the right staffing in place so that we're investing in that early? And then what does that partnership look like with our county providers, with our different nonprofit providers and so forth, our tribes? I feel like there's a lot of great work that's happening and that we'll want to continue to build on moving forward.
And then I just wanted to add to Kim's earlier question, when Zan mentioned like increased like diversity, equity, inclusion, that kind of like light bulb for me. I think that's how I've seen this council change the most. Initially, as a youth, it felt like I was required to be here because we're receiving federal funds, which is true. And I feel like as the council has like progressed or evolved, I feel like we really have valued what youth and helped encourage them to find their voices. And that's been really evident for me by little things like trying to explain the acronyms or, you know, not use them all together, or switching up our lingo so that we're not, so just so it's easier to understand for youth who maybe are not in that field. And then also I just want to say I'm really happy that we shortened our handbook, like I mentioned, the 3-ring binder and stuff. Like, you know, I just feel like we've been very intentional about making it more accessible.
Tabidi, we see you. And Kim may have her topic. Tabidi, did you hear the question?
Oh,
I think you're muted. No. Oh, there he is.
Can you repeat?
I will, and I will try to wrap ourselves up here in the next 4 or 5 minutes. So Kim and Tabidi can kind of have the last words. The question was, why did you join the council, and has that changed or shifted in your time?
Why did I join? Serena reached out to me and talked to me about the council. I think I have a perspective and a voice site that I think can be very useful to the goals. And I wanted to also really have an impact on, and I've been seeing it happen, of just making sure that the efforts are proactive rather than reactionary. And I feel that happening, and I feel the use of the word, the idea of equitable outreach to youth is hitting gender, disability, region, really sensitive to that. And I feel like I've been part of that. I'm not saying it didn't exist beforehand, but I feel like I've been a part of that. So, and as I've been on the council, I do see my presence as very unique. We have people who are judges, lawyers, and I'm among the, I'm sure there have been professors before, people who've been educational administrators. So I feel that that's a nice added additive as a citizen of the state to servicing our youth. So,
Thank
so
you.
I took on that challenge. Yeah.
Thank you. Kim, you get the last word.
As Brian is my witness, do you remember our interview? His first question was, who are you? Who do you know? How are you related? I'm like, I don't know anyone. I don't know anything. I applied, and it's fascinating to hear your application timeline, because I applied in September of 2023, and I got an interview like relatively soon thereafter. But in retrospect, it was a pity interview. So obviously a pity interview.
Yes, we've improved the systems.
Literally, I think his second sentence was, I don't think there's room right now, but we're going to continue to interview. And luckily it worked out. But because truly, you remember this. He's my witness.
And I talked to her, and I was like, oh, wait, actually, we need this can work.
I knew nothing about Youth Development Council except that there was the word youth. And that was why I applied. That was literally the only reason why I applied, was because I thought I was having a fascinating conversation with my friend, Judge Lapasai, and I said, I want to do something. You know, yes, I'm an immigration attorney, but I want to make change, not just fix the problems that keep spitting out by the system. I want to make change. So how do I do that? And she said, you need to get involved in a board or a commission or a committee. So just pick one, something that is important to you, and just apply. And so literally I looked through the list, and there's lots of, I'm sure, worthwhile causes, but there was the word youth in Oregon Youth Development Council, and that's why I applied. And that's literally what I told Brian. And it's like, you know, what are you trying to accomplish? I was like, actually, let me ask you, what are you trying to accomplish? And if what you're trying to accomplish sounds like what I want to accomplish, then I want to be part of that team.
Great, Laura Lee.
Such a lawyer. Not prepared. So that was why I joined. Was because you were kind enough to interview me and kind enough to offer me a slot. Over the last year, I went from the first retreat. So 1 year ago into this retreat, and I came home and I said, oh my gosh, husband, I do not know what I signed up for. Speaking a foreign language, going 200 miles an hour. I don't know anyone. Everybody knows each other, and they're all like CEOs and executive directors, and I'm nobody. But I quickly got dragged in by Anya. It's funny because you said you weren't involved in anything. I didn't have a choice. She's like, you're going to this next meeting. I'm like, okay, but I don't know anything.
You're not alone, Kim.
Good strategy.
And I went, and over the last year, I've got to participate in things I wouldn't have otherwise, and I'm still learning. The one thing I will say is, in the last year, I now appreciate and understand that it's okay that I don't know everything. I still don't know how RFA works. I see the announcements, but I have to, you know, stop somewhere, and I'm already on like 2 committees, so I gotta stop somewhere, and I really want to be on the youth committee, so, you know, I gotta stop somewhere. But I think in the last year I've realized, okay, I can't fix everything, but the few things that I can do matter. And even if it's just one thing on the youth detention guidelines, I've added just a few things. But if that's what makes it better for our youth, that's fantastic. If after the strategic planning, you know, my 2 cents about the convening and community programs help a nonprofit that otherwise wouldn't have known about the organization, get a partnership or get funding, I've helped. Maybe I'll never meet that person, maybe I'll never know I helped, but at least I put in the time and I helped. So that's why I'm here.
Lovely. Thank you all. Not by much.
We actually had until 1:10.
Oh, sweet. Maybe like 5 minutes for a break and plates and trash and whatever, and then we'll get started.
1:20, let's get started.
Sweet. I gotta run back.
Sally's gonna help me with this. Okay.
Valley knew it.
Oh, you wanna do it, or you want me to do it? Okay, so we're gonna do lean in, lean out. So, all right, so I need everybody to stand up. It's gonna get blood moving.
We're gonna sit out on the street.
Yeah, we're gonna try to do this without, so I need your help.
Maybe we're doing, all
right, we're gonna need your help to lead this. Yeah. All right, okay. So,
is everybody standing?
Where's everyone going?
oh, we're all standing. Sorry. We're gonna play a little game.
Oh, okay, all right, I'll just watch.
Oh, you can do this too. This is interactive for hybrid as well. Because we can see you.
You just.
All right.
Okay.
It feels like I'm in a stadium.
You're basically Taylor Swift.
That is concerning.
I'm happy about it.
It's the boots, it's the beard. No, we're not. Just the boots. All right. So we're gonna play a little game. Sally and I are gonna co-lead this because we've never done this, but we're gonna give it a shot. Okay, so we're gonna give some instructions, and you'll do this first round. You'll do the same thing that we're giving instructions in. So we'll practice a little bit. Yeah, you've seen this. All right. So we're gonna say lean in. That means lean in. So just lean in and kind of stretch. Kind of get some blood going. Lean out means lean back. Lean left. All right. Lean right. All right. So the first round, you want to lead the first round? Or you want me to?
No, you keep going.
Okay. All right. I'm a little anxious about this. Here we go.
Okay,
All
but
right.
I think that they need to.
They need to
you
practice.
you need to say it, and then they
Okay.
need to echo it
So,
as they do it.
all right. So I'm gonna say to do something. It'll be one of those 4 things. You're gonna repeat what I'd said and do the same action at the same time. All right. So lean in.
Lean in.
Lean out.
Lean out.
Lean right.
Lean right.
Lean in.
Lean in.
Lean left.
Lean left.
All right.
All right.
All right. Okay. So now you're getting a little mind trick. You're gonna say the opposite command. Yeah, you're gonna say the opposite of what I did, but do what I say. Okay. So for example, I'm gonna say lean in. You say lean out, but you do what?
Lean in.
Lean in. All right.
Oh, no.
Oh, wow. All right. You are doing what I say,
Okay.
saying the opposite.
Okay.
All right, here we go. So, man, I'm nervous. All right, so, lean out, lean in.
Wait, what?
I didn't say it. Okay. All right, so here we go. Lean in.
Lean out.
Wait, okay.
Lean out.
Come on, Paul.
So you are going to, I screwed up. Oh, man.
I wasn't even
See,
looking
I'm
at you. I was just trying to concentrate on the
Do
word.
as I say, repeat the opposite.
Okay.
Then Paul, you have to say nothing.
So we're gonna do it again. Okay,
That'll be
so
easier.
lean in,
Lean out.
lean in. Oh, we're already. This is so. There we go. Thank you for trying. We need to practice that. That was so exciting. Good idea. So with that said, before we turn it over, kudos to if you've ever taken sources of strength training, that is one of the games that they lead with middle schoolers. And they do it seamlessly. It is incredible to watch how they do it. So
We didn't even
anyways,
get round
we
3,
didn't-
where you can do the opposite of what we say, but you say what, you repeat the same thing. It gets very.
It gets harder than what we did.
That was hard.
Which we could not.
We couldn't do it.
Hey, Shabini, were you able to do it? Did you try?
Tabidi, try.
Yes.
I wonder if the middle schoolers.
Oh, I
laugh.
think you messed up by you should have just said the command and listened to the group because you were messing yourself up. Just see what they do.
The trainers literally say it and then they do the opposite at the same time. Like, yeah.
Yeah.
In my mind, it did not.
Yes.
All right. Kudos. Thanks, guys, for trying.
Thank you.
All right, to the slides. All right, folks, one more breakout session. And the goal of this one is to focus on the priority projects. So earlier, we really looked at the strategies and high-level outcomes. I think in that conversation, folks are still kind of seeing projects emerge. And what we want to do now is start to look at the projects and try to identify, ideally, we've kind of stolen the idea of 12, to be honest. We saw another strategic plan, there were 12 projects. They said, these are the first 12 things we're going to do. Maybe for us it's 10. I think 20 might be too many, but what we're trying to get at is like, hey, let's find this first batch of things that we lead with when we start to implement this plan that really help us to get momentum, to get some wins, and that actually facilitate some of the other work. And so there's, I guess, how are we on time right now? We're not too far behind. 1:30. Yes, we've got about an hour. I think we can tighten this up a little bit, and basically you'll do about 20 minutes, and then switch, and we're gonna do this again with picking the odd numbered strategies. Pick one of the 4, and we'll do a second round of the even numbered strategies. And what we want to do is look at first what's already happening and identify that stuff. Because as we've talked, we've said, well, this one is already underway in some fashion. So we don't want to prioritize that because it's happening. We don't need to include that stuff. If you hit one of those, and I think this is where staff will probably be really helpful, because in many cases there's someone who says, yeah, I know we're already working on this. All you have to do is just circle that one. And if you just put put a circle on that one. I think that works. Just so we know, we're like, hey, this is already happening, so cool. And we probably want to put a list together of what's already happening for when the next update of the plan, we can say, hey, here's work we've already started. But then after we've done that, what remains, that's like 99% of it, what projects are setting up this strategy or the strategies for success? Which ones offer the quick wins and the momentum? Does if you're looking at that project, is that measure the right thing to measure? Does it connect to the outcomes that we've already talked about earlier today? Like, it might be that some of these outcomes that have been identified tie directly to a project. And maybe that's actually the place to start, because we have a clear sense of how that is going to show us progress for that strategy. You might also find some that just really appear to be difficult, and we're like, let's just stay away from this for a while. I think that's also okay, and I want to validate that that's good for us to be aware of. I think strategy session 7's got a couple of those. But essentially, you want to take about 20 minutes for each, and then we'll have a much shorter debrief to just talk about what projects folks have identified. The goal in each of these breakouts is probably to figure out which one or maybe 2 in that strategy are the ones that the group says, hey, like, let's elevate these as the priority projects in this strategy. Because again, if we have too many, then we'll have to do this all over again. So, any questions?
Stars on the ones that are priorities?
Yes, thank you. I would say a star, or you could put a Post-it note if you want to, like, just maybe a different color Post-it note, or put a star on it. In some way, if you need to add some information, just to kind of say, hey, this is the priority project, and here's a couple of thoughts I have about it, that could be useful. If you write on these things, it's fine. We're going to take pictures, they will get recycled. not precious about it. But just find a way to identify it, and when we share out, to be able to point to it and say, hey, like, we've agreed this is the project, or these are the 2 projects we think need to be prioritized. And you could take the time. I mean, it might be that there's a needed discussion, because some of these have 10 projects, and it might take a little time to get to that, so that's what we want to do. Yeah, go ahead, more questions.
More, just a couple of statements. One, we did put into the project some things that we started. So Cord referenced that. You don't need to spend a lot of time, but we did that on purpose. It wasn't that we, that somehow it was a mistake. We intentionally said, hey, there are these are things you all, many of you were a part of identifying last year, a year ago. So some of the work related to the RFA, like we couldn't wait. So we knew that there was work, strategic work, important work to get going on. So we started getting going on it versus just waiting. So that's why there are those things on the lists. And again, no, I don't know, for those who've done strategic planning in the past, like it's for us, I think helpful to have that momentum and to also have some things that like, we can check off. I saw Anya on some of the preventing, efforts to prevent youth violence and justice. Like there's some things that I saw like we did this, this is done, or this is in progress. That's great and okay. And so know that. And then I think the second thing, I imagine maybe there's been lots of discussion around maybe either refinements to projects or like, as we were talking about outcomes, I tried to push people to say, okay, I'm less interested right now in the how and more in the what. Like what are we going to accomplish? What does success look like? But sometimes, in order to get to the what, you need to think about the how. So if there is something that is either not well articulated as a project or maybe is in the notes, I think that's possible to elevate as a priority project. So if you're like, well, it's kind of here, but I see it, it's over here, and maybe it should, so that's okay too. So if we want to elevate a thing that is either not as well articulated as you thought it needed to be, or is maybe new or somewhere else, and just try in your groups, that's okay to elevate. There's notes and there's things, but I did hear those conversations happening this morning. So if you see a thing if there's consensus around an idea that isn't, again, fully realized in a project, or well, if we did this and this, but they're actually, or 2 projects that really well align into one thing, I think that's okay.
We're gonna compress them.
Yeah.
Squish it.
Yeah.
Do you want us to go back to the same ones we did, different ones, or does it not matter? Sorry, you may have said that, I just was not sure.
I think it's great if you are really passionate about one. I don't want to tell folks not to go to what they really want to dig back into. But I also think it's great particularly if you're trying to get a broader sense of things, I think moving around is also good. But I think I'm okay with it either way, because I do think there's, like, if folks are really excited and engaged about something, I don't see a reason to not continue to dive into that. So, cool, yeah, so I think that was a really good point, Brian. Like, some of these have a lot of these other things written on the side, where they may just be referencing some of the projects, or there are new ideas there, and yeah, that's not off limits. I would say just do your best to try to find a way to visually signify it, and then we'll share out, and I will try to capture it so that I don't miss any of these prioritized things as we come back to synthesize all this. Yeah, fun project for the next one or two. All right, I'm gonna give us 20 minutes. Make some kind of animal noise, and then we'll switch it up.
You were gonna make the animal noise?
It's my turn.
And I can put somebody in a breakout room with Jerry? Is that right? Or did you?
Record's the one logged on now. It's
Okay.
my computer.
Oh, okay, so it's Cord's computer, but you're fantastic. All right.
Do you mind using my?
Yeah, thank you for doing that.
Thank you.
Mine's closed.
Yeah.
we've got some work to do before we actually want to launch into taking the time to invest in creating a database. If our data reporting isn't that stable yet, that may not be the first step. Did you all want to add anything else?
No, that's true.
Okay.
Thank you. All right, it is 2:15, so we're doing okay. Well, let's jump back into it with the last 4, and then we'll do this one more time, and then we'll debrief. All right,
Almost there.
even numbers, almost there. Strategies 2, 4, 6, 8. Who do we appreciate?
IDEO.
IDEO, there you go.
Give maybe folks, we'll go through the priorities, and at the end, I think we should kind of give everybody a chance to maybe answer one of these questions about your experience here today and over the course of the retreat. And then we'll be close to hopefully getting everyone out of here on time, except the staff. But council and guests, we really appreciate you being here. So I think we'll go backwards again, maybe from 8. Unless.
No, it's fine. I'm just laughing because I seem to be the first time every time. It's totally fine. It's totally fine. We'll go.
You sure?
All right. Are you guys sharing or not? All right. So we had a great conversation and around broadening participation in grantee convenings, and we've added in community conversations and like this concept that we're talking about around like honoring, celebrating our programs. And so we put P54 as kind of a top priority, which I think is broadened from just RFA work or review, request for application work to all of these around making sure that we invite YDC members to our grantee convenings, our community conversations, and then explore this concept around just a celebration for our grantees that may be an outside foundation or something on it. And the way my mind works is the odd and even years, right? So this year is a year that we feel pretty strongly that we have to do community conversations because we're releasing an RFA, strategic plan work, all that stuff. So the even years, on the odd years, is there a way to add continued conversation in these areas around honoring the youth? So these, we have ambassador youth, or we have programs that share out, and just more of a celebration and invite the legislators to invite community members to really honor the work that's happening there, which then has a plethora of effects around the RFA in terms of having organizations learn from organizations that are currently being awarded, hey, these are great services, this is who IDEO is, and so expansion. So am I supposed to answer one of these two, or are we gonna go around?
No, we'll go back around at the end. I just thought I'd throw that up so folks can be, as you're hearing this and everything else, thinking about these things.
I don't want to ask my partners in crime on this one if there's anything that I missed.
We did try and merge some things so that we
Yeah.
the list. A lot of what's going on in number 8 is happening. Start out with that.
Yeah.
Because this is the RFA request for application topic. And so we won't get on just a couple of things, but we do feel that priority 61 and priority 54 can be linked. The priority 61, which is very specific trainings on things like suicide prevention and cultural responsiveness, could be integrated into the grantee convenings. It doesn't have to be a separate item, kind of a part A, part B. But we did want to highlight the fact that the community conversations were more of a priority than the convenings at this time, just because of the timeliness with respect to the request for applications.
Cool. Thank you. Pass it to strategy number 6.
So ours is engage and share power with youth. Our priority would be create youth-centered, youth-led recruitment orientation process for new youth YDC members. A lot of what's here, the different programs that's listed, we feel like would fall into place if we complete P37 and P35, which is establish informal youth conversations or spaces led by youth. I think when going back to the recruitment and orientation process, I think there's certain things that youth need that are different from the adults. For example, being able to tell their story without the, in a way that doesn't re-traumatize them, or in a way that is not, like, they don't feel pressured to give too much detail. And so I think that's important and something that we could include in like that orientation process, like the basics. Like we don't want you to ever feel pressured or, yeah.
And then what I would add is we also talked about how do we consider our partnerships with current grantees, past grantees, future grantees in the recruitment work around supporting youth, because so many of them have professional lived experience on creating strong, engaged spaces for youth that are youth-led and really more grassroots. And so how do we take learnings from our grantees and integrate it into our work? And then when we think about tailoring for your youth leaders, how do we make sure that we're like helping them understand the work of council in a way that's easily to understand and accessible, but not, I think you said it best, like it's not dumbed down, right? Because we want to make sure that it's accessible and we're building agency and partnership. And then we also talked about like the goal that was shared earlier was if our goal is recruiting a little over 30 council members with more than 50% youth, how we would want to consider how we structure council and the supports for our youth members so that we're not just inviting them to the same space, but what are we providing support around and changing or improving so that, again, it's more of a welcoming space for youth and their engagement, participation.
Great, thank you. Strategy 4.
Sure, I'll give it a go. This one's squishy for me, so we'll see. Okay, she's better. So this is increasing alignment with youth serving agencies. So we thought that P17 might be the strategy to focus on, which is kind of aligning service models and understandings and connection between all the various youth serving agencies and organizations that are out there. And a little bit of that is also reducing silos, kind of having that North Star, reducing silos to increase connections and just understanding. And that might drive a couple of the other ones that are about kind of having grantees being able to navigate youth to other organizations and support systems, and also that kind of older youth, that 18 to 24, and how to navigate them into adult serving or older youth serving organizations. So kind of that first step of increasing alignment, reducing silos to be able to drive the other ones.
All right, cool, thank you. And then strategy 2, Brian, do you want to?
Sure. So our strategy, build and maintain a sense of inclusion and professional development. It says in YDO, but it's Cord and I started looking at it, and we pulled in Yoselin, Helene, and Lawrence. Like, we started to think there's some more youth development council strategy. I think this one, strategy 1, and that maybe this could focus more on just the division and the staff. I think there's a ship coming up.
My son.
Is your son? Okay. He's arriving. So we thought, okay, so just a little adjustment, like let's focus in on the staff pieces here, since I think the other council stuff is covered in other places. So that's number 1. And then in doing that, we landed on a strategy, or sorry, on a project that's on the paper here next to it, not so much realized, not so much in the projects, but around really making the most of the employee survey that the ODE actually puts out in all, or most I think of our Gallup engagement. It's done by Gallup, but take that and actually do our best to act on what we find from that survey. So that felt like a good first step. We just have recently completed the survey. We'll get the results. We had last year's results. I did say to our group, like, I actually tried to figure out what Gallup suggestions were in follow-up, but it was really hard for me to get something tangible, but we'll do a better job. And see what tools are. And then also in our conversation, Yoselin had some really good suggestions, which we wrote down as kind of new potential projects that are more staff focused around, hey, what are the dollars available for professional development within our budget? And so that we can figure out for the 25-27 budget, employee resource groups, and just other opportunities for connection among staff that are maybe not so much about like work, but just some good staff belonging and inclusion ideas, I think, are all contained here. We'll start with the Gallup survey and its results first.
Yeah, thank you. So there you have it. We've got, let me count them up. That one actually doesn't have a number, does it? That project.
It doesn't, but it's.
I'll find it there.
P11 is what
P11.
Yeah.
It kind of P11.
Well, I bet there is a P11 somewhere else.
Yeah.
P10A.
Let's go ahead.
Ooh, that's 10.5.
I'm just kind of giving them like this one's P-add because I don't know.
It's kind of P9 actually, Court. Now that I read these.
P9-ish.
It's kind of P9. Kind of.
So that we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I'll call that 1 because it's all combined. 9, 10, 11. Is that 4? No, I think we had 12. No, that's. I gotta double check this. I think we might have actually achieved this really, really efficiently. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. I'm coming up with 11.
Woohoo!
So excellent work.
That was amazing.
It'll be done by tomorrow.
Yeah. Well, that brings us to my big question is how on earth am I gonna make sense of all of this?
Is that the question you're walking out with?
That is the question I'm walking out with. But I'll maybe pass it. I don't know who wants to start. I want to give everybody a chance to kind of throw something out. This has been, I think, a really productive day, and I am so excited that we kind of we built this agenda and we've been tinkering with it for the last 2 days as we go, and it's worked really well. And I think hopefully it's been fun for all of you to participate in this, but I'm very excited with the outcome. So. Anybody want to start? And you can just popcorn it to someone else after you say your piece.
Well, just to add real quick, Tabiti's no longer on, so it's all of us just in the room. And I think there's some questions. I can't see. I can see that.
Yeah, I can read the questions out.
Yeah.
What ideas or ahas from the past 2 days are resonating with you? What has surprised you? What are you excited about doing next? And what questions are you walking out with?
We can choose one of the questions to answer.
You can do more than one if you want.
Jenny has ready.
All right.
I just had, this is just on my mind, because I haven't been involved in the committee yet, apologies. But I would like to be, but I want to make sure that it's connected to these priorities. So are the priorities going to get connected to the committee?
I think someone mentioned this earlier, and I think that as this plan comes together, that the committees will probably need to be rethought to align. I mean, we created the Equity and Disparity Committee as a result of the last strategic plan.
And consolidated policy, rules, research, and everything else under the sun.
So I almost feel like the committees seem like they are ideally built to carry out the strategic plan. And we will always have a juvenile justice committee because there's some essential work that happens there. And I think we will always have a youth committee because I think that's an important space for us to maintain. I, as one of the staff for policy, rules, and research, will admit that one's been really hard to do because it's so overbroad that I think it's made it difficult to really get momentum. Our work groups have been really productive, and I think there will be some work groupification of some of these things as well. Because that time-based sort of intensive work has been good to do. So I think the answer to your question is that like, there's probably gonna be some thought given to committees to make sure that it's aligned with trying to implement the plan, yeah. I don't know what that looks like.
I think what surprised me is that some of these strategies, when we first started talking about them, felt very overwhelming. Like, this is huge. I don't know how we're gonna approach this. And then as we work together to kind of break things down, it seems I'm leaving feeling like refreshed and like that all of this is doable and that we can actually achieve these more broad strategies. Yeah, and I am excited about where our council is going and the things that we're going to take on and are taking on already.
But it'd be easier if we just go in order, so you don't have to like popcorn it.
Oh,
Yeah.
I feel like every
Yeah.
council meeting, I continue to learn something new about a different scope of our work that I thought I may have understood, but really didn't. So I really appreciate the time to learn that's been built into this exercise. And then I'm really grateful for the time we've had. I said this yesterday, to really be in community. And just seeing, I was able to participate virtually for part of the strategic planning process last year. It's just 100 times better when you're in person and able to see everything. So I thank you for all the organization around this. And I'm excited about being able to operationalize the next steps that we're sort of gelling around. And my wondering is like, what support do you need from the council to continue to keep moving?
I think I am most excited about the plans that have been laid that feel really achievable around recruiting more youth and creating pathways for their participation at multiple levels.
I think I really appreciate kind of the sharing of information and the opportunity to incorporate kind of our council members in these conversations and hear from their perspective and answer any questions they have. I think it provides them a better idea of kind of the work that we have in front of us. And I'm kind of excited to see the moving part, the implementation part of it, actually, getting to work on those things that I'm really looking forward to.
I'm really excited to see the one pager that comes out from and I will already volunteer to be a draft looker upper. I'm also excellent on Canva, so but yeah, I can't wait to see the product of what we did today. I have high hopes.
I'm very excited about the emerging strategy for youth engagement, recruitment, and retention. I think this conversation has been deeper than the most that we've had so far on this topic, and that's very exciting. Thank you to all of you who were really involved in that work, contributed to the conversation. I'm excited about the potential for partnering with a private foundation to actually do some sort of a celebration and awards banquet thing to recognize all the work in this youth space. I don't think anyone else in the state is doing that, and I think it's a real opportunity. The question that I'm walking out with is, it sounds like Lady Yogi's at least another 2 staff people to get all this done. So how you know, is it doable, and how can we help to make sure that you have the capacity, knowing that A only focuses part-time on youth and there's no communications person on staff right now. So
let's see, what has surprised me? It is always surprising to me that we get to the end and we accomplish so much. It seems like so overwhelming at the beginning, and you all are amazing at doing all that work. I'm also excited to see the implementation, like you mentioned that, Abe. It's just really exciting to be at this stage for the next thing.
I think what has been really exciting for me is just hearing what everyone has to say about like how we can incorporate the youth more in our work. And I think something that really resonated with me was kind of like the mentorship part for our youth. And I kind of, I heard when Jocelyn said she met with Janine yesterday and they had a good conversation. So I'm just kind of thinking about that, like when I work with the youth, like how are we able to just connect like even the newer members with the older members to having that mentorship within the community. I think that's really going to be great.
So I just want to kind of echo Zan's point in how we approach or engage with grantees and or legislators, coming to them with a more celebratory attitude and a more strength approach in highlighting the successes of our youth stories. I think it's wonderful, as opposed to just coming with information and or a demand as to what you need to do. So our approach in engaging with these groups of people fascinating to me, to really want to look at that and change perspective just enough to really make an impact on that.
One of the things I'm excited about next is I'm walking away with kind of a concept, more of a concept, having looked at this for a long time, not a lot less important, Brian, of the strategic plan stuff, but going into community conversations, I feel like there's a lot that we can add and really create it less about an information dump for grantees, but more around and getting their insight and input. And one simple example is about capturing some of those stories. So we can put that in the community conversation. It's like, we want information and pictures from it. It doesn't even have to be grant reporting, because people want to share their story. And so we roll that out at a community conversation. I think it's going to have some impact. And so I'm excited about taking something of that nature to grantees and conversation. That's what we do.
Good couple of days. I did appreciate our little lunchtime kind of roundtable conversation. I wasn't sure in the moment, like, oh, do we have time to fit this in? But I just appreciate our outgoing council members, our continuing council members, our newer council members who are asking really good questions. But somebody said something about, hey, it's important to make space for that. And I am happy that we did, and happy that folks asked some good questions and others just had time to kind of process out loud a little bit about what they've seen and learned and what's worked and things that we can do better. So that was kind of surprising, and I'm glad we made space for that.
I was just here today. I wasn't able to come yesterday, but just even in today, I think, and this just shows when I think of YDO, I think of Anya. and now Lawrence and Brian too, but it's always been Anya. And so all of my focus has been on, they do juvenile justice, they do JCP prevention. And that's my own fault for being in my own silo of that is what it, and it's not. And so today I've learned like how much more broad it is. So that's good for me. And then I think that with that and just some of the last discussions of thinking about how to reduce silos, that there's already some of that just happening. So that was good.
What I'm walking away with, what's resonated, I think just being in person, this is like my first in-person thing that I've been able to do since joining this council, and I feel like the energy is much more the present. And I'm walking away with a lot of clarity about a lot of the work that our council does, and I'm just more confident in
being a council member, as well as being excited and walking away with questions for myself on like what my role is as a council member to make sure these strategies go forward and what my personal impact is. But yeah, I've appreciated all the conversations I've had with every individual here. So thank you if you had a conversation with me, and I'm excited to have more conversations in the future. So yeah.
I think what surprised me, I don't know why, but it really did, like taking this document and then in the room for the last 2 days that like really came alive with so much engagement and ideas. And so I started to really understand better our agency, but then also the relationship with the council. So I really appreciated the lunchtime conversation, get a little bit better understanding of the history and all of that. So that was really cool. And I'm super excited about this idea about celebration and also audience, about sharing the great work that we're doing, to different audiences where we really may be able to continue to strengthen the work across the state for our youth and families and communities.
I really liked on strategy 3 where it says identifying our champions and the key information that they need to be effective advocates with us. And I really like, someone had said, getting the impactful stories from the youth and highlighting that and possibly putting them on the MyDeal website, because I think that could get a lot of attention for us.
I think I am excited about, to echo your point about breaking down silos. I think that is something that I've seen that we've really begun. I've seen that through our convenings. Other agencies, state agencies and organizations are really getting to know who we are. I think we're making a name for ourselves, and we've grown ever since I've been here. And so just figuring out where our mission is in alignment with other agencies and with grantees, and bringing grantees together and breaking down silos so we can use resources more efficiently. And it's seen that really start to happen. So I'm just excited to continue that work.
Well, to me, the surprising thing is I heard my name so many times today. And I don't know if it's a good thing. Part of it is, am I such a drill surgeon? But I make people come to the community. So anyway, but I decided I'll take it as a compliment. But I promise the intent not to be to overwhelm the conversation and to be the center of attention. But if I push the line somewhere, I'm sorry for that. But it's an important work. That's an important committee. But I was also thinking about today the wheel that we looked at in the morning, and the piece of the pie that said generosity was a little, if not confusing, but needed additional understanding earlier today. But yesterday and today, this is what it was. It was generosity that was shared from council members who've been on the council for many years, for the newest to come, to our staff. This is a very generous exchange of thoughts, ideas, feelings, and everything was done in a safe place. So I feel like we followed the wheel. Am I the what? I don't know. Oh, I see.
Yeah, so I think actually Debbie has already said this, but I learned a lot from you and from I can't remember her name who was here earlier from ODE. Rachel, thank you. She's not here, right? No. Yeah, so I think that to the agency collaboration and alignment, it starts with you all being present here, and I just personally learned a lot about how different systems work with Anya's programming, and that's really helpful for me to think about like how I can participate. Like knowledge is power, right? So when I understand these systems better, then I understand how I can fit into it or support. I want to appreciate this format. I think great job on setting up a really engaging format for us, because it's like I looked at this and honestly, like my eyes crossed and I was like, but it came alive. And like, it's actually meaningful. I'm not a policy person, so when I say document, that's like just key whatever through whatever. So I need this in order to digest it. So great work to all of you for engaging us in this.
I'll keep it short. I guess the question I have along the way is what's next. It sounds like a lot of our nuts and bolts are tightened, and to echo from what other people have said, I do have a better understanding of who we are as YBO and what we want to do. And it's, I don't want to say like a machine, but if we were to imagine YBO as a robot, I'm just ready to put us on in the community and see what we can do.
Hey, Joy, can we go to the next slide? I can actually maybe answer one question, which is just to, I think I'm afraid, gonna have a full new updated draft plan by December 12th. I'm afraid that I think maybe we'll be close. Maybe.
We know our 12 or 11
we'll work on this. We'll get you as much of, I mean, maybe this feels very overwhelming because it's all over every wall. There's a lot of post-its. Maybe we'll actually have a draft plan out by the week before the council meeting. Then, that's probably possible. I shouldn't say what I can't do. I should just say I'm going to do it and try when I have to do it. But the goal is to actually have a new, more, essentially to incorporate all of this, have a new plan that we then can make available to the council and to the community and get some feedback. I think what we're talking about we are planning some community meetings in January and February, but that will somewhat be focused on our grant processes, because that is, I think, what a lot of folks want to hear about is what are you planning in terms of funding and RFA and stuff. But we also can use that as a place to begin talking about this plan, and in particular, try to highlight the things that are really going to impact grantees and give them a chance to give us feedback on this. So we're thinking about how we're going to do that. And the goal is to have a final version of this for the council to adopt in March, so that we can just say we now have an adopted plan, and then it's a living plan, it's in action, and you're moving on it. And so it's a tight timeline, but I think from where we were a year ago to where we are right now, it's come a very long way. And I actually think that the feedback and all the ideas generated today are not going to be hard to incorporate. I actually feel like there's this sort of thing where I'm like, I made this and it kind of makes my eyes cross, like I'm just like, this is ridiculous. But like, actually, I think that there are the right bones for all of this stuff to be able to attach to. And that feels really good. I think even things like the numbering, which is kind of wacky, also like it gave people a reference point. Like at first I heard people saying like P23, P60, I'm like, what are they talking about? I'm like, oh, like projects. so there's sort of this thing where like it's worked out way better than I could have expected. And so I think that has a lot to do with everyone being really willing to get into this. And even if it is like kind of a little bit insane looking, that I really am so thrilled that everyone's just buy-in and engagement. And I think Zan, you mentioned like a strategic planning meeting in 2019. I don't think any staff were there. I think at that point, and were there some? Anya maybe?
Oh God, that's my name again.
Yeah, so like I got pulled into strategic planning, and then Brian changed directors. Brian came in and we finished the strategic plan. So this is actually like, now we've had this, it has been a bit long running, but this like cohesive group of council and staff have all been engaged. So that's just all really very cool. Like this just feels really good. So that's my takeaway. And that's what's to come, is we're going to try to get this thing wrapped up and start the work.
we should take a picture, we're gonna, yeah, it's 3:15, I know we're over, we're gonna take a picture or two, maybe two. And then, clean up and get out of here.
Should we go to the last slide, Julian?
Robots.